Yo, it's Guido coming at you with the Tactics Talk. Welcome back and thanks for tuning in. A tank review of the new Swedish Tier 8 Premium medium tank, the Lansen C. You can see it here in my garage. It's also got a nice 3D skin. Some of the new things that Wargaming is kicking out. How many do we have of those now? 4 or 5 of those, maybe a couple more. But we should see more of these 3D skins coming out in the Lansen C. With certain packages you can buy, you will get that skin. We'll do this review the standard way. We'll talk about an overview. We'll look at the tech tree considerations, look at the 3D model, look at a comparison amongst its peers. I will stick with the premiums in that case. Look at my stats after about 27 battles. Look at my setup, and then I'll give you 3 examples of battles in the Lansen C Tier 8 Swedish Premium Medium Tank. That's a mouthful. Getting ready for the new, well, semi-line, splitting off from the Leo. We'll talk about that in a minute. Swedish medium tanks. Let's get started with the overview. All right, here it is. It's got an interesting skin. You can see it's got kind of the Viking motif on it. We've got some shields, some helmets, the flag, all that good stuff on there, and then some Viking runes, Nordic runes, whatever it is there. It is Tier 8. Up until now, the mediums in the Swedish line only went to Tier 7. That's the Leo right here. We'll talk about crews and things when we get to the tech tree. It is not a very large medium. If we take a look at the other mediums at Tier 8, and there's a lot of them. 34-3, a bit bigger. And even though it seems tall, it's actually not that tall. It is quite compact. STA, bigger. Even the 34-2 is just about the same size, and that's one of the smaller mediums at Tier 8. The VTU is massive. We got the, holy cow, the AMX is gigantic compared to this thing, and even less armor. The Lorraine is quite large. So it is not a very large tank. Well, actually, the STG even looks large compared to this thing just because of its length and bulk. 416, a little bit more low slung. So it is a rather compact, small little package of a tank right there. You can see that fairly square armor angled here and on the front, but we'll look at the thickness of the armor, and it really isn't that thick, although you will get some strange bounces, and we'll look at that as we get into the 3D model. You will get some goofy bounces off this, and the mantlet is okay, but it is kind of tiny right there. Not much else to say about that. Let's move on to the tech tree considerations. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Hold the phone. Let's take a look at this thing. The vehicle details. Developed by the Swedish company Lansen for the Swiss Armed Forces. Interesting. Tank was supposed to feature a Swiss copy of the British 20-pounder. Blah, blah, blah. But all activities were discontinued in flavor of the 30-ton class vehicle. No metal prototype was produced. So this is one of those napkin tanks, just drawings or a plan or a proposal. That's all it was. All right, tech tree considerations for the Lansen C and your Swedish crews and whatnot. As this is a premium tank, there are no modules to unlock, so it comes fully upgraded. Here is where it will split off from on the Leo, or where the mediums will split off from on the Leo. And there'll be 3 mediums at Tier 8, 9, and 10. And then, of course, it's not in the tech tree for sale. You've got to buy this currently via the store. But it would sit here like this premium is sitting at Tier 6. It would sit over here at Tier 8, maybe like the STRV S1 is showing there. That's where it would live. Now, the crew setup in it is the same as the Leo, which is good. If we look at this, it is the standard commander, gunner, driver, loader. And you will find that on the Leo, the Sturv M2, the Lago, but when you get down to here, and unfortunately it doesn't show that anymore, so you've got to go to details, we get to a 3 crew setup when we get to the Sturv M40L, M/40L. The Sturv M/4257, which is the current only medium, or it was the only medium until the Lansen came out, is a 3 crew because it's an auto loader as well. My understanding with the tech tree mediums that are showing up is, from what I can tell, they're 3 crew as well. So your loader falls out. I believe it's the loader falls out if you're doing any of the training. So not ideal really. At least you'll get 3 of your crew in your new tech tree Swedish tanks trained if they're running around in the Lansen. Or if for some reason you were looking for the ultimate Leo crew, then it's a straight across swap, no problem on that. And that is really all the details in the tech tree you got to worry about. Let's take a look at the 3D model. It won't take long because there's not much armor on it. Right, a quick look at the model is going to tell you that you're not really going to rely on the armor too much. It's about 70 millimeters on the turret and on the front, and about 40 on the sides. Because of the angling, it will be a bit increased depending on how much angle you give them. You do the side scrape thing here, getting 123, but really that's not going to stop any tier 8 gun of any kind. In fact, it is in danger of being pinned by quite a few HE rounds, especially if they can flat plate the shot and not get this angle as you're going here. Even over here, I put a little angle on the side, and I'm still not looking at anything. That's an auto ricochet, but just a little more angle, and people are going in there, even though it increases your thickness a little bit based on the angle. It's not much. I have bounced stuff off the mantlet. The mantlet is strong, but look how tiny it is. That's just unlucky for the enemy. If they're aiming at the mantlet, that would be unusual. It's just unlucky for them if it ends up hitting right there, but not too thick overall. So do be careful with this. It has quite a large track size on the side. Obviously the back, like any tank, it doesn't have much of anything. So angles are always good. Give them some angles as best you can. You might get an auto bounce angle on there, but even with poking the turret on ridges, and it does have good depression, it's not really a great ridge brawler as far as bouncing shots off the turret. It's a good ridge brawler in that it can use its depression effectively to minimize the rest of it. And the turret is relatively small. Oh, let's spin it all around right there. Turret is relatively small. Let's move on to the next thing. All right, let's take a look at a comparison with the Lansen C, and I've got a good grouping of other premium tier 8s. I do not have any of the protected matchmaking tanks like the Super Pershing or the Type 59. We're just going to look at the ones that concede tier 10, so it's more of an apples to apples. And I've got kind of a broad brush. People would say the 54 Mod 1's pretty good, the Centurion 5.1 is pretty good, the T44 100 is pretty good. They would not say the same about maybe the AMX CDC or the STA2 or even the Panther 8.8, which actually I happen to like. But let's take a look at this because it tells kind of an interesting story with the design philosophy that they brought the Lansen C out with. Taking a look right off the bat, the average damage per shot is 320, and that is only eclipsed in this group anyway by the STG at 390, and it is high for any of the tier 8 medium tanks. And usually when you have a high alpha, you have a medium to low DPM, or you have some other thing that kind of offsets that high alpha. But let's take a look at that and see what those might be. The penetration's 208, and while you look across the board, it's not at the top. It's certainly better than the KR. It's better than the Mod 1, better than the 44-100. And 208 is a decent standard AP penetration number. Rate of fire is relatively low, but then you take into account the damage per shot, the alpha, and you come out down there for the average damage per minute of 2,177, which in this group is top of the class, tied with the Panther 8.8. So you're not losing a lot with that really nice alpha. You happen to have one of the best, if not the best, DPM of the tier 8 premium medium tanks. Gun depression is -10, very comfortable, very useful. +20, also very good for looking up. So you're not really losing anything there. Reload time is relatively long. It's not STG long for the 390 Alpha, but it's not too far off the 6 and 7 second guns as well in there. But when you take into account the Alpha, which is a full, 80 higher than the standard 240, 250, 230 that you see with everybody else, you're able to get that 2,177 average DPM, which is quite high. 2.4 on the aiming time is pretty long. That's KR long or Panther 8.8 long, which was interesting to me. But of course, the Panther is 0.31 on the dispersion. You come over to the Lansen and it's 0.36. So you've got a relatively long aim time and a relatively large dispersion circle. It is something of a derpy gun at medium to long range. You really want to wait to let this thing zoom all the way in. But once you do that, it actually does a pretty nice job. And if you're talking close to medium range shots, it will snapshot okay. Clearly not Panther 8.8 okay, but not bad. Which is a bit of a dichotomy. Do you really want to get that close to the enemy when you've got a tank that doesn't have a lot of armor? So a bit of a trade-off right there. It likes to be medium or close for its accuracy. It likes to be medium to far because it doesn't want to be shot back at. Survivability a little bit low on the hit points at 1350. You can see the rest of them are 14, even up to 1500 with the Panther 8.8, but it's not as bad as the worst in this group, which is the Mod 1 at 1300, a whole 50 more hit points. Here's that armor. The hull is 60, the turret is 70. I talked about it when we looked at the tanks.gg armor profile. There's just not a lot of armor, but it's better than the CDC, which is very, very vulnerable to artillery and HE shells. The Lansen is also, but not nearly as much. Once you get to the 50, 60, 70 area, you're not going to bounce stuff, but you're not quite as all-fire to worry about every HE shell that ever comes your way like the CDC will. To a large extent, it plays a lot like the CDC with a little bit more capability overall. The mobility is nice. Now, here's the thing that's really nice about the Lansen C. It's got a top speed of 50, but its specific power is right up near the top. And it's not CDC specific power, but it will jump off the line at 28.39. It will get up and get going. It only goes to 50 kilometers, which is not top of the class, but it is still pretty quick and faster than a lot of these tanks. But the point is, it will get up and get going quickly, and that is useful for running away. If you're in a scrum, you're in a fight, you need to get around a rock, you need to get around a house, you need to put some cover between you and the enemy. The faster you get up and get going, the better. And the fact that you only go 50 instead of 55 doesn't matter in that case, because it's really about time, how fast you can get up to that 50 to sneak around and not get shot in the back. It's just one of those things that, regarding the way World of Tanks is played, having a specific power and a decent top end is way better than having a crap specific power and a higher top end speed. Concealment is pretty darn good. If you take a look at that, 16.87, it's near the top of the class. Remember, it was a smaller tank, so it actually has some pretty decent stealth. View range is 380, it's at the bottom of the class right there. Still, though, in the ballpark, there's plenty of others at 380. There's even one worse, the STG at 370. And who cares about signal range? So what do we have here? This is interesting, the trade-offs, like I said when I started. It's got a really high, not really high, but a relatively high alpha, and still comes at you with a pretty high average damage per minute because of that alpha. Even though its reload is slightly slower, it has so much more alpha than the 240 guys that it pumps out 2,177, and that is a great combo. In theory, what it trades off is a relatively inaccurate gun, and a soft-skinned kind of tank itself, right? The gun mount is relatively soft-skinned, but it's also very mobile. So this really is a good player's kind of dream medium. It hits hard, it does a lot of DPM, it has the mobility they need, and they'll trade off a little bit of armor. And in fact, it's not terrible on the armor. It's not great, but it's also not terrible. Plus, it's got the depression required to play World of Tanks the way it's played with the maps and the way they're designed. So really, a good player can leverage all of those given the small drawbacks, and it really does have exactly what you want in a medium. Lots of shots down range, lots of DPM, good mobility, decent enough armor that you're not going to get blown up by artillery. Too much anyway. You will a little bit, but not too much. All right, let's move on to my stats. So how did I do in 27 battles? You can see here, 63% win rate, 1,089 on the average XP, 72% hit rate, which is a little low. I think that speaks to the derpiness of the gun. Damage and destruction ratio up there. Armor use efficiency, yeah, it just doesn't have much armor, but 0.18 means every once in a while you get that lucky bounce. Talked about the experience. I'm averaging 1,819 on the average DPM, and I'm receiving quite a bit, actually. You can see that my survival rate is 37%, a little bit lower than I would like it to be. And assist damage at 603, which is pretty good. Vehicles spotted, vehicles destroyed, and the best I've done is 3,576 damage with, and the best or most kills is the Top Gun at 6 kills. If you take a look at the Progetto 46, which is another somewhat recent premium tank that came out, I ran 60%, 914 on the experience. I think if I went to 100 battles in the Lansen, this would come down a bit, maybe into the 900s. I'd love to keep it above 1,000 average XP at tier 8, but it has been decreasing a little bit. Somewhere around 18 to 20 battles, I was sitting at 70% and over 2,000 DPM, but that's an outlier. Even 18, 19 is high for my premium tier 8 medium tank. So I would expect that to come down to the 16 to 1,700 once I played 100 battles in this thing. But I think this is a pretty good snapshot of about what you can do as a good player with the Lansen C. And it tells the story that it's a pretty darn good tank. I think there's one or two, maybe one or two platoon games in there while I was streaming where I played with subscribers, but the rest of it is all solo right there. So, hey, look, stats show the picture. It's actually a pretty decent tank. Let's take a look at my setup. So top modules, because it is a premium tank, and I am running a vert stab, a rammer, and improved ventilation. That's pretty standard. 51 AP, its gold round is an APCR. I've only got 6 of those, and 8 HE. Pretty decent, actually, because it is a 105, pretty decent HE shell at 420 average damage for taking out scouts and artillery and that kind of thing. I'm running large kits and a large fire extinguisher, and I did run quite a bit of the directives, which is not something I do normally, but I've got extra ones laying around for certain things. Initially, I ran vent purge until I ran out of those, so adding plus to the crew across the board. And as you can see right now, I'm just testing out the steady hand, which is, well, what does it do? It's snapshot, right? It adds to your snapshot capability. There you go. It gives snapshot to 100, and I don't know what it does. I don't even know if it helps, to be quite honest. But anyway, I'm running that thing right there, and I have incorporated that into my gameplay, especially because we get so many free directives right now. I'm just using them as they come in. There's no sense letting them sit there. They're not worth anything. Be careful, though, if you click on the auto resupply, you need to watch it, because you can easily start eating into your bonds. If I hover this, I can see that I've only got 4 in stock right there, so I need to, after 4 battles, either change it to something else or turn it off so I don't start eating into my 10,632 bonds up there. You could probably carry a few more gold rounds right there. I don't know if you'd want to do anything other than this. Some people would probably put optics on this before they put ventilation, or even potentially the vert stab. But because it is relatively derpy, I do recommend the vert stab. If you had to go optics and not the vents, then that's to taste, up to you. So that is how I had this thing set up. All right, let's look at some examples. All right, for our first example, it's going to be a single tier battle. You can see that I'm here on Fjords, headed up to the northeast corner, and you'll notice immediately that the power to weight ratio is pretty good, and this thing will climb really nicely. Putting the T-44, obviously the Super, even the Scorpion in the dust as I go up the hill. And you'll notice that on a couple occasions in this battle where that nice burst speed or off the line speed, because of its good power to weight ratio, really helps this tank. In addition to that, with very nice depression, there's a couple spots up here that are very usable. Obviously you want to be careful about the turret. It's not that strong, but you will, again, as I've noted earlier, get some lucky bounces here and there. So I'm going to get up here quickly and able to catch some of these guys out. I probably should have went after the 105 back there instead of exposing myself that much just to get a shot on the Super. I get lucky and don't take any return fire. That hits me. Looks like somebody did fire in there, but they missed. So I can use this little ridge right here nicely with a -10-degree depression. No problem. Plenty of TDs back there, though, to ruin my day, so I do need to be careful. So I dodge down there. I go dark, and I pop back up and see if I can find something. They have quite a few tanks down around here, so we don't want to get over-aggressive. And if you push down into that little mouth down there, you're going to end up dying pretty quickly. So we're going to wait and see if they feel like they can push up in, and that appears to be what's happening. As long as the enemy team or my team does not control the area around E4 or 5, you can push up in there without getting shot in the back, and that's what has indeed happened here. However, we can fight from up here if we're careful. If we get lit and expose ourselves too much, kind of like that right there, I can expect multiple shots coming in from TD, so we just got to kind of be careful here. And so that top part of that ridge is not working out. We have to come down here where I can start to get shots in their face. It's not as favorable position, but at least I'll get some shots. And the GF is being a little bit unwise. He comes in there, and then he tucks up, still providing me some shots. I want to be careful. He can pin me. Come in here and see if we can get a shot on him. He's backing up. And there's that decent close to mid-range accuracy. Again, it wasn't really zoomed in, so you are counting a little bit on RNG to help you out. And then I'm going to take a shot. I'm trying to aim for the weak spot, and then you can see right there, it's going to struggle unless you fully zoom at mid-range like that to hit those little weak spots, such as the Super Pershing's hatches on the top of its turret right there. So not perfect. So I'll just change what I'm doing. They've seen me pop there a couple times. Let's come up here and see if I can find a different angle on these guys. And then the 91 GF makes another big mistake and pushes up into there with me up top, and then keeps pushing in, and you can see the mid-range accuracy is enough. Looks like the Super wants to come up, but he gets shot in the side, and they really kind of misplay this. here, and the three of us are able to take these guys down. There's a Lorraine 42T. I don't want to get clipped out and see if I can sneak a shot into him as he runs off, but he's behind the rocks there. Not quite. Again, exposing myself a little bit, but nobody can see me, so I'll dodge down here and see if I can get a shot on the prototype. And I actually find the other super Pershing, which I didn't notice that he was actually on this road. I thought he was over kind of where the Pershing is, but he's actually sitting right there on the road, and I'm able to put a couple shots, mine and somebody else's, into him, and we take that guy down. Got this pretty well under control. The Hawk has burst on in there. Looks like the 59 sees me, but I get a return shot on him. That was an example of zooming in pretty much all the way. The CDA is looking at me, and you can see how every time I move, that dispersion just really gets big. Lose a lot of accuracy, and unfortunately we're not able to really support the Hawk too much. He dies in there. And we all sit back. I think had I pushed in, I'd die too, so that's why I didn't go in with him. He was a little bit early, I think, on the move to get in there. Pershing's up top, he gets tracked, and we'll put a shot into his back. Down he goes. And now it's just breaking up this Type 59 and TD glob while being careful about the 40T. So I don't want to get clipped out by that guy. So one of the TDs and the 40T, and I'm pretty much done. So we'll just keep working on him. There goes the RHMB. That was a good kill for us. And the 44 pushes first. Good on him. So I'll just follow up. All right, fine. Let's take our hit points in, and we find the 40T out in the open. He takes a couple big hits, and now he's much more manageable at 450 hit points. Between myself and the T-44, we should be able to deal with this guy, provided we don't run into too many more of the TDs. And that'll depend on where they flex to. But the prototype dies. The CDA is down there, and all we've got is the two mediums. So the Lorraine comes around looking for some shots. Gets one on me. Looks like I actually bounced one. So there's one of those goofy bounces. I actually bounced one of the Lorraine's shots coming in there. Probably hit me in the turret without going back and looking exactly where it is. So he either caught some weird angle or maybe got my mantlet, something like that. And we'll push on in. I've got 3,276. I think a little bit more. One of those blind shots, I believe, went in. We'll push in. And I'm not really certain if we actually find the Type 59 right here. And we find him, but I don't know if I get the kill. Oh, that's right. I remember what happens here. We'll come around, and I'll just take a bad shot. I actually try to shoot him in the side right here, and I get a bounce or track, whatever it is. And they push in and kill him. And we'll eventually hunt. Actually, we do not. We do not hunt down this CDA. He is probably from where I get lit down here on our promontory. Because as I come around this corner and go through these buildings, I get lit. I won't make you watch that because nothing else happens, and we end up capping out. So there's a good example. Same tier, very good tank, same tier. Like most tier 8 tanks, they do pretty well, same tier. But this one, with its DPM and its capability of maneuver, its burst speed out the line, its -10 gun depression, very comfortably used on most of the maps in World of Tanks. All right, let's go to the second example. For the second example, I am bottom tier, but only a 2-tier battle, so only 1 tier down. Here on airfield, spawned into the west side. And I'm going to head up to the sniper hill first. You can see good speed, so that's one of the nice things about this. This time we're going to talk about the flexibility of this tank. It has quite a bit, just based on all of its characteristics. I mentioned it in the video before, or the example before, that it's able to use most of the terrain in World of Tanks and use it well, because it's got all the characteristics you want. I know I'm beating this like a dead horse, but we're talking about its ability to accelerate, its good top-end speed, its good gun depression, all those things put together. And it's a relatively small package, so it can actually get into little areas and use some of the smaller rocks, things like that. So we'll come up to the top here, start taking a look. 6x6 is running across. I don't think I get a shot on this guy, but he does take some artillery, hitting him right there. And we find the Mod 1. Being a little unwise, sticking through the bushes, but I don't quite get a shot on him. Artillery goes in on that dude and stuns him, and I get lit. That little spot right there, by the way, just so you know, there's a little opening here, and while that bush looks like it's easy to use, you can get spotted right there through that little opening. So I'm just going to back in here, and now I'm looking at this going, all right, we got 3 guys up here. We don't really need 3 guys up here, and oh, by the way, the middle is completely uncovered. So before we get completely rolled up on the middle, and the enemy figures it out and just comes around that corner, let's go ahead and flex over there and use this tank's capability, its flexibility, its speed to get over there. And we're going to use this hill. And the nice thing about this tank on hills like this First is gun depression, so I can pop up over here and take shots at people while minimizing my exposure. My acceleration allows me to move around the hill quite well, actually, without much bother. It's not a big, slow, lumbering tank up and around hills and steep patches. I find the T-49, and I've got, there we go, we find the 34A. So we're going to work this side hill right here, 34A. What is this thing? I don't know. IS-3A. It is an IS-3A. The auto-loading version of it. So he's kind of in a bad spot. I see him moving, so I'm going to come around here and take a shot while he's moving. That means his dispersion is bad. And he has bad dispersion to begin with, worse while he's moving. So he's taking a couple hits in here. He's moving backwards, not really paying attention to me, so I'll put another shot. That bounces, and that's unfortunate. 2 shots didn't quite get into the side of his tank, got up a little high into his angled armor. And I'm obviously worried about the Mod 1, the T-49. I'm still the only guy in the middle. Looks like we're doing okay in the brawling area. We really have him overmatched. Take a big hammer blow from the 53-55. Drops 364 on me. And now these guys are looking like they want to push in. I'll go ahead and use my kit so I can get my dispersion working out. Take a shot on him. Tuck up here to make his shot harder. There we go. And again with a miss, so just really not getting much luck. There we go. Got a shot into him. Took one from him. Actually got a track, didn't I? And then the T-49 comes after me, and I'm thinking, well, that's a bummer. Tried to square up the front armor so he didn't pin me in the side. Somebody tracked him. That really hurts for that poor guy, and down he goes. I see the 3A trying to move through. He gets killed. And now I've got a Lansen coming at me from the side, so I put a shot on him. I actually blocked one. So again, there's that armor. Sometimes, occasionally, it works out for you. That evened us up a little bit hit point wise. I still don't want to take any more than I have to. He's fighting several directions at once, and I'm able to surprise him right there. And just pretty good example of the maneuverability of this tank. The ability of it to use backsides, to use depressions. I guess it is depressions. It's so depressing. And we'll just try to keep on holding this because it's Rompel stomp time, right? We're up 7-0. I was able to hold this over here enough that the huge stack of guys over in the brawling area were able to take down their few tanks there. And slowly but surely we worked down their guys that were in the middle. So come over here, we got the ML doing his thing. Medium range shot, not too bad. Didn't have to wait too long for the zoom in. And we'll just let that zoom. And again, RNG does its magic right there. Not really a zoomed in shot, but I wanted to minimize the amount of time the Scorpion might have had to shoot back. Now I'm worried about crossing right here. I'm sitting at 611. Probably not a one shot, but after he hits me, if I cross while he's aiming, then I will be a one shot. I've still got a mod 1 here, so I'd like to get some more hit points. I'm going to wait a few potatoes. Maybe the Scorpion forgets about me, and we'll cross when I can here. There we go. And yep, I'll just shoot on the way. And I don't think he actually spotted me. I don't remember seeing the 6th sense show up right there. So there he is. Again, not very zoomed in. So RNG did its work right there. That shot more or less went directly where I was aiming. And you notice that the dispersion circle was quite large in there as well. And I don't end up with any more hit points of damage. So I do 3 kills, 2,396, 1,174. But a good example of the flexibility of this tank and its ability to use all the terrain in World of Tanks. Let's move on to the third example. Our third example is a bottom tier example on Karelia, spawned into the southwest, and I'm just going to run up here to the donut. And I was feeling like this is going to be a big problem. I've committed, and I'm seeing all these mediums come. I lose some hit points on the way, but the T-44 peels off, and I've got the AMX-30 up here. And the 12T430 and the 34-3 do not aggressively push up on us. Now, we do have 2 artillery, so I want to watch out for that. I'm taking a look at the T-44, and I'm feeling like, well, if I sit on this back edge here or come up where the AMX-30 is, I'm going to start taking shots into the side. So I've got to change this fight. It's not looking great right now. You can see our artillery is making their life miserable over there. Their artillery is making our AMX's life miserable. So I'm just going to use the relatively good mobility on this, and it's really nice, too, because it can take a hill really well. It's just going to drive up and around hills, no problem. Doesn't take much time to accelerate. Look at that acceleration. I don't quite get away from the 430, but that's okay. He's sitting there, so I just aim in, and unfortunately I bounce, and now I can tuck in here to this spot and use my artillery going in there and use my maneuverability and my gun depression and just kind of be a big pain. You'll notice that our heavies took the opportunity on some of their trap tanks to come around them right there, and now these guys are in kind of big trouble. We dropped the 430, we have the T10, the 12T's making a runner. I'm just going to get a really nice shot right into the back of the T10. That's all nice right there. And he's going to spin around. He doesn't like the fact that I'm shooting at him. He's going to turn around, and we'll just aim right down on top of that little hatch. Put another shot into him with a 305 low roll. Terrible. He's looking at me now. He misses. I didn't mention it, but the backup speed's pretty nice. You'll notice how fast this thing can kind of dance around forward and backwards. T10's being unwise by not moving, so it allows me just really to zoom in on that weak spot. The MX-30 is just having a field day over there. Put another shot into him, and he misses again. I'm able to pop out, minimize the amount of my turret is showing, and because my reverse speed's so good, just pop right back in. With a shot in the Type 4 onto his side. Now he's looking at me. Try to go for the weak spot there. Ends up bouncing. Artillery's working this guy over. Going to the side for 352. Nice little high roll on that one. T10 really wants to shoot me. I can see him kind of looking at me here. And I eat a shot from him. Overexposed, trying to get to the Type 4. Now that dude's looking at me, so I'll back up. Artillery thumps him, and down he goes from the AMX-30 as he's staring at me. And that is the good thing about having multiple axes of fire. The MX-30 and myself, the Type 4 was going to have a hard time pointing, obviously, at both of us. So when he's pointing at one of us, because his turret's relatively slow, the other one can pop out. And it's a good example here of being a support tank, but being forward enough that the support is where it's needed, right? I'm not sitting back where the 44-100 is, going, hey, I'm a support tank. I'm up forward someplace protected where I can help the mainline guys from where I am be a very difficult and harassing kind of player right there. Problem now is, though, that the EBR, the 5100 are coming around. I don't want to push down there. As soon as I come down and start heading down that hill, all they have to do is come around the corner and kill me. Plus the T10 is still sitting there, and I hadn't seen him for a while, so I wasn't really sure what he was doing. The 257 takes a hit from him, so we're just going to be a little bit cagey, because while this looks like it's pretty much a win, it's not necessarily. They've got quite a few tanks left, and the Grill A just comes raging in here, which was kind of interesting. So we'll shoot him as he comes up. We'll back up. He keeps coming, keeps coming. I'm hoping to get a reload here. Just come around here into where I can get reloaded and then just catch him around the corner. I'm thinking, well, I'm probably dead, so let's try to just track this dude right here as he tries to make it. There we go. A little track on him. Wiggle around a little bit. Firing gold at a Grill A. Don't really know why I'm doing that. Just track him, and he ends up getting my gun. Somebody else hits him. I bail out of there because I'm going to out-reload him, but then the 44-100 gets him dead. They just come up around behind him. And now it's pretty much all over but the shout. We'll speed this up. Initially come across looking for that. I'm wondering if the Emil, Tiger 2, and 50 are going to go back towards the cap. We have a lot of guys pushing towards cap, towards the enemy cap. So either they're coming towards ours or going towards theirs, and it's hard to tell, but we're all over their cap, and it's over. And they're never seen. So the assumption is they either sat there or maybe went in several different directions. They were just too slow to get up and over. Maybe they were hanging out around here trying to see what was going on our cap, or they committed towards our cap, then realized it and turned around. There's a million scenarios right there for why they didn't do anything, but clearly they all didn't do enough. Whatever. All right, man, that's it. 3 examples. Let's wrap this up. Right, that is it for the Lansen tank review. Overall, it's a really good premium tank. It really has no major weaknesses. Even the armor itself is not that big of a deal, unlike the CDC, where it's a kind of a critical problem with a huge tank and very little armor. This thing, as you can see, every once in a while it does get a bounce in the right situations. And overall, the package itself is much better than, say, a CDC, which is one of the tanks it is compared to quite a bit. One of the questions, though, is how well this thing works as a trainer for the rest of the Swedish tanks. The Swedish mediums, I believe, are going to be 3 crew members, where this thing is 4, and they've got the mechanic of the siege engine thing going on. So I'm not really sure how that's going to work. It's going to play completely different from the new medium line, even though it is the tier 8 medium for the Swedish tanks. However, it can get you started on the training. You can see my crew right there is actually pretty good. I've got one of the Christmas Snow female crew members in there, and then some others. And I'm basically using this to get my crew ready for the new tech tree line for the Swedish tank, starting at tier 8 for the mediums, even though one of them is going to be kicked out because I believe it's a 3 crew setup for the tech tree. And that's all I've got, man. It's a pretty good tank. See ya.